Are you trying to follow the Mediterranean diet approach to eating, but feel overwhelmed about knowing what meals to make? In this video, I'm going to go over my easy formula for how to have success anytime you want to make a Mediterranean diet meal so you don't miss a beat. Hey there, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor. I was trained in Italy, and on this channel, you are going to learn how to master your health with the Mediterranean diet. All right, let's dive right in. So first, we need to understand what is a framework for a healthy and balanced meal, not just for a Mediterranean diet approach to eating, but for any healthy and balanced eating approach. So we need to think about what elements do we need to hit. I like to explain this in a triangular pattern by what I like to call the healthy trifecta. So this is where we're incorporating specific nutrients that are going to help us feel full from what we're eating and help us slow down our digestion. So we are going to feel good after this meal. It's going to give us lots of energy, sustaining us for several hours until we get to the next meal. Plus, this is also really good for our metabolic health. It allows our blood sugar to increase and decrease more slowly following a meal, which we need to happen in order for our pancreas to not get angry at us and for us to have healthy blood sugar regulation. Something that if any of you have diabetes out there, you're going to know a lot about. So what are these three components? Well, it's fiber, healthy fats, and protein. So as long as we're incorporating a source of fiber, healthy fat, and protein into our meal, we know that we're giving ourselves balanced nutrition. So what does this look like in terms of actual foods? Here's my formula for success. You want to select for yourself a healthy protein, select some fiber-rich foods, and then select some produce to include in your meal, whether that's vegetables, fruit, or both. Now, what can we use for healthy proteins? Well, in the Mediterranean diet approach, we are going to emphasize as many plant sources of protein as possible. This is going to include legumes like beans or lentils, some whole grains like quinoa or farro, and nuts or seeds. But the Mediterranean diet is also really abundant in seafood and fish. And these are some of the healthiest protein sources out there. And then to a lesser degree, we can include things like poultry, chicken or turkey, for example, and then even less often, red meat. So thinking about having beef, veal, lamb, or even pork for special occasions. So then adding to it some fiber-rich foods. These are going to be things like whole grains, the legumes that I mentioned before, the nuts or the seeds, or a combination of all three of these types of foods. They're going to go really well as a side dish or as the base component of a meal. And then adding to your meal some kind of a vegetable or a fruit, depending on which meal of the day this is for you. So this could be a side salad or mixed greens in your bowl altogether. This could be cooked vegetables as part of your healthy lunch or dinner. Or this could be a bunch of chopped fruit. If you're gonna have a fruit salad, maybe this is part of your breakfast or a component of your lunch. Now, how to actually put this together on a plate? Well, there's really two ways you could do this. I like to divide this into the more Italian style of eating, where you'd have multiple courses at your meal. So you'd have your first course, then your second course, or you can go with maybe more of an American style or a classical style of eating, where everything is all at one course at the same time on your plate or in your bowl. You can really choose which approach you like because there are no rules. Now, for a lot of examples about how to do this at each meal of the day, I have a complete guide up here. So if you're interested, you can check out that video for lots of different meal ideas according to the Mediterranean diet approach. But if you're short on time, I want to explain to you what I like to call my meal hack. This is the easiest meal you can make for yourself any time of the year if you have very little time. And before we dive into that, I'd like you to please subscribe to this channel. And your subscription really helps us get this video out to more people who deserve to learn this information. Okay, so if you're really short on time, here's what I suggest. Why not throw everything together in a soup or a stew? Now, this is one of the easiest things you could possibly make and is so classic Mediterranean. So let's work backwards for a second. Think about something like a minestrone soup. This is going to be a soup that has some kind of a broth. It could be from vegetables or from chicken or from meat. And then there's going to be a lot of vegetables cooked into that, and it might have some beans, or it might even have some kind of lentil. And then it might have a little bit of pasta or another whole grain in there. And then possibly you could even add some meat. So do you see how all of these things can kind of bind together really easily? Here's how to do this for yourself. So first you want to pick your base. Now, the easiest thing to do would be to buy some kind of a broth from the grocery store, but you could absolutely make your own vegetable broth really easily. You could also cook down bones or get some bones from the butcher and then make your own bone broth as your base. But you don't need it to be a broth base. You could start from something like canned tomatoes. If it's the winter time and you want to have a creamier, thicker soup, maybe you're going to go for that cream base or something like a coconut base if you want to incorporate some Asian flavor. I know that's not classical Mediterranean, but it's just too tasty not to mention. Okay, so now we have our liquid base component of our soup or our stew. Then we need to think about what vegetables we want to include. Now, there is no limitation for how many types of vegetables you'd want to put in a soup or a stew. You can stick with just one, maybe it's two, maybe it's three, maybe it's 7 or even 10 types of vegetables. And the cool thing is that making a soup or a stew is an easy way to kind of clear out produce from your fridge. If you think you don't have enough time to eat it all before it goes bad, or it's even going a little bit bad, you cut out those pieces that don't look so good and you put the rest into the soup or the stew. No one will know the difference. Now, of course, you could use vegetables that aren't just from fresh. Frozen, things like peas and carrots diced up, or frozen broccoli, for example, is an awesome thing to just throw into a soup or a stew for easy and convenient cooking. Or you could go for canned stuff. Whatever you can manage, wherever you are in your journey, you should feel proud to incorporate more vegetables no matter the source. Okay, so then we're going to have a lot of these different vegetable components. We want to make sure there's some sort of an oil that we're able to actually cook down some of these veggies before we're adding that liquid base on top. So according to the Mediterranean diet, the most classic oil to use is olive oil. It's very aromatic. It's super easy. If you're not already cooking with olive oil, I cannot encourage this enough. So then we want to have some aromatic ingredients. So this might be things like diced onion or garlic. It could be some herbs or spices, something to just add a lot of flavor. Then we'll want to select our protein to include. This can be things like beans themselves, lentils if we're making a lentil stew. This could be a little bit of protein from whole grains in combination with those legumes that I mentioned. And then we can, of course, open up the options into all of the animal foods, things like fish or seafood stew or meat or poultry. And you can sort of imagine now how there's going to be an easy soup recipe to find for any season of the year, even for something like a cold soup. And now finally, this is not necessarily a separate ingredient, but I just want to point out, if you're incorporating a lot of the things that we already talked about, you're going to be hitting on a lot of fibrous foods that are really important for helping us feel full. And this is a complaint that I think a lot of people have about soup. They think of a soup as something that's not a filling whole meal. It's really just a side dish of their meal or the first course of a meal. But I'm telling you, if you incorporate a lot of fibrous foods like legumes, the beans and the lentils, some whole grains into your soup or your stew, you're going to be helping yourself feel really full at the end. And part of that is because of all the fiber you're going to be putting in there. Now, here's the real reason why I love making a soup or a stew as an easy Mediterranean meal. It is incredibly easy to cook. You really don't need that many chopping skills. If every little piece of vegetable that you cook is a different size, doesn't matter. It's going to get cooked down anyway. It's very versatile. You can pretty much make your soup or stew taste like whatever you want. And you can really play around in the kitchen this way. Now, some people are avid recipe followers, but I like to play around when I'm in the kitchen and see what flavors go together well. It's one of my favorite ways to express creativity in my own life. The cool thing also is that soups or stews kind of cook themselves. So once you do a little bit of the front end meal prep, the chopping, you put it in the pot or you put it in the crock pot and you kind of let it do its thing. And then when it's done, it's just completely of a new dimension. And the reason why this is so time effective is you can make this in advance and it can last in your fridge for several days. And there's this thing about soups and stews where the flavors deepen and change over time. So that second or that third day, it might not even taste the same as it did on the first day. What's also fantastic is for those of you out there that are really meal preppers and meal planners in advance, making a soup or a stew is one of the easiest things that you can do to then create a huge batch in advance, freeze different portions of it, and then you have it later for those lazy days when you come home from work, you're too exhausted, and you just want to heat up something fast that's healthy. Such a good alternative to frozen pizza. Now, if you're ready to start playing around in your kitchen and maybe you want to make some of these things into a soup or a stew or just an easy Mediterranean diet bowl or a salad, any kind of a dish you'd like, you gotta check out my guide up here to the top 12 Mediterranean diet ingredients to include in your approach. It is so essential that you get these down. Jump into that video. I'll see you in there.